This is my Peugeot 307 S model 2008 1.6 petrol version, and I'm replacing the coolant, the antifreeze in the car, so this is a video how to do that. Stay tuned. First, of course, undo the coolant cap. And always do that on a cold engine, not really on a warm engine, because there is a pressure and this is quite hot. Next thing is I need to get access to the two bleeding points. One is on the thermostat there, another one on the heater matrix by there. So I need to remove the filter, this resonating thing, and the brake fluid. So first thing, in order to do that, this the resonator needs to be replaced. So first is that pipe there. This pipe needs to be rotated clockwise, that direction, and then this could be separated. So I'm trying to not to block the camera. So it basically rotated that side, and then this could be pushed out. Sometimes it's a bit difficult. But there we go. That's removed. Next thing, in order to take the resonator out, there is a small pin here that you have to press in order for this to be released. So you push it that direction, and then the whole thing could lift. Sometimes it's useful to push that pipe as well, because it's somehow in the way. So push that aside, and then it's a simple lift. The whole it's a resonator box. Next thing is, in order to get access to the filter and the two bleeding points, brake reservoir needs to be removed. So it's two screws, and this kind of pulls out and aside. So this could be easily, for the moment there is no need, but you can easily pull it. Don't pull it too much, and then it could be put aside. In order to release the filter, there is a bolt that's holding it there, and it's a 10mm bolt, so that needs to be undone. So towards the back of the engine there is a clamp that holds the filter down there. It's just a simple screw, and there is also this yellow part. So I'll zoom in. This needs to be undone. Until it kind of freely moves like that. Next thing is to undo that pipe, and it's a simple yellow tab here that you have to press on this yellow tab. Let me point with something. You have to press on this yellow tab and really pull the pipe backwards. And I'm not too sure if it can be seen on camera, but I'll hold it and push it, and then I can simply unplug it and kind of put it aside. Next thing is this is already unscrewed, the two screws, the brake fluid reservoir, so I'll pull it out slightly and put it aside. It doesn't hold very well because it's kind of not that flexible, and I have to remove the air filter box. So it's a simple push it to that side and unclips from that clip, and basically you pull it out. So I'm having my hand on that reservoir just to push it aside, and then it's a simple, sometimes a bit more difficult than unclipping it. And you hold the brake fluid reservoir not to drop and break some parts. I'll clip it again there, and this is the air box, air filter with this pipe that I said it moves. This can also be removed like that, and that's how it gets in and out. So why did we need to take all of these things, the air filter box? Because one of the bleeding points is exactly here on about the thermostat where I'm pointing. That's one of the bleeding valves, and it looks like a tire cap. The second air bleeding valve is on the heater matrix, and I'm pointing with it's down here. It's a bit difficult to see. Let me zoom in. And that's the second air bleeder valve on the heater matrix down here. So next thing is to drain the coolant from down here. I've put some plastic sheets in a suitable container underneath, exactly there, because it will spray around, so I didn't really want to coolant everywhere. What I also have is this particular yogurt plastic that I've cut the bottom off, and on the sides I've cut it as well. So how I'm using this, so I'll put this on the pipe like that underneath, so when I release it from here, it doesn't really spray that much around. It's just I think doesn't so the pipe goes through here and it kind of hits the walls and goes down, so it doesn't really create much to go everywhere. Next thing, and this is just a screwdriver to undo, but you might have a squeezy thing, so you need pliers depending on what type it is. Mine is just a screwdriver. Move it, so unscrew it until it moves aside, and move it kind of aside, not to be kind of in the way. Remember to have opened the coolant reservoir cap, otherwise it won't really, because it's pressurized system, it won't really empty that easy. So next thing is to kind of wiggle it out, but not completely take it out, because it will splash coolant everywhere. I generally undo it only slightly. Until I kind of see it leaking only slightly. Started to leak a bit, and then I have my little thing. Put it in there. I probably need 2 hands as well. It doesn't really help this too much, but it's still better than nothing, spraying liquid everywhere. And then I'll only very slightly wiggle it out, but only slightly, so otherwise it sprays coolant everywhere. So I'll hold it down there until it kind of doesn't leak that much. So I'll push it. I've drained a bit, and I've pushed it in again. I haven't drained all the liquid. Now I'm going to undo the first bleeding point, just so it can drain from there as well. So it's simply you undo it, and you can hear air coming in. While I'm at it, I want to do the second bleeding point as well. And sometimes it's just easier to undo that vacuum pipe. Basically you just squeeze it from both sides and pull it down. There you go, that's the vacuum pipe, and then I can undo the bleeding point. You probably can't see it, but it's down there. It's the same kind of type. There we go, that's the second cap, and it's kind of open. And I'm continuing with the draining all the coolant. Slightly wiggle it so it doesn't really spray everywhere. There we go, that's it. I can just push it and just leave it to drain the last few drops. This tool kind of works. I mean, I've done it, but it doesn't really spray, only sprays only slightly, a little bit of water there, otherwise it might spray just everywhere. So it has drained completely, so I can kind of wipe it a bit. There is no need to wipe it, but I generally wipe it a bit everywhere, just not to have so much coolant everywhere. And then it's basically need to push that pipe in until the end. It doesn't want to go anymore. So if you wonder what the coolant is, so I have the thing underneath. Wait, I'll pull it out. So my coolant really looks rather clean, and I have a small thing just to to show you how clean it is. And this really looks really clean, but I've done 4 or 5 times with water just to clean it, because it's a new car. Well, it's I purchased this car and just wanted to make sure that I've cleaned all the coolant. It was pretty rusty before, but this will be the coolant. So this is quite toxic to animals and so on. So dispose it safely. This is pretty much water, but dispose it safely. Next is to screw the clamp back on. We have to fill it up with coolant, and I'll have something convenient, doesn't matter what it is, to put underneath the first bleeding point. Now secure it with a tissue. Just has to be snug, so it's it kind of, when you pour in the coolant, you can see dripping here water, and then you can close it up. So for the second bleeding point, I put a glove on this vacuum pipe there. You can't quite see it. I put some tissue around, and also have put a cup there just when this starts bleeding, so not to just spill everywhere. I mean, it would be alright if you leave it like that, but it would just spill coolant everywhere, so I just want to protect the bits and pieces. That's how this will be. So next is to fill it up. So I'll fill it up, and I'll just observe when this starts dripping. Initially this will drip with a bit of air inside, but pour the coolant slowly, so this will drip with air inside, and I'll top it up a bit until this starts bleeding without any air. So I'll be using this Halfords OAT antifreeze already mixed, and that's the red version. I mean, there is a specific, you can find it in the description of the video, there is a specific Peugeot antifreeze, but I'll be using that. It's kind of alright. So I have a funnel and just pour it in. The first few 1 or 2 liters or so, there will be nothing will be dripping, but you have to observe whether any is dripping for the first, any liquid or coolant is dripping from the first bleeding point. So I'll now pour in, and I have the camera on the first bleeding point until it starts dripping, so I only have it on here, otherwise I'll be pouring the coolant in the coolant reservoir. And I'll pour it slowly until I see some liquid dripping, because if you pour it too quick, this will start bleeding, but then the second point will also start dripping, not bleeding or bleeding, but releasing liquid. So you want first this to be clean, to tie it up, and then tension in the second one, otherwise liquid will pour there and around the engine. There we go, it started bleeding or liquid coming out. Let's see the second one hasn't yet started. So you can kind of hear it, how there is still, I mean, I cannot zoom, I can probably zoom a bit more, you cannot quite see it, but there is a few, maybe I can move the camera a bit, so you can see how little bubbles are coming. So this is still air in the system, so I'll leave it until no more bubbles, this is not producing any more bubbles, and then I'll quickly close it. Of course, is the problem that, there we go, I've closed it. It's a bit of a problem that my thing is not large enough, so I have to empty it. So I'll release a bit more, also just to make sure that all the bubbles have come out. It's a bit difficult, camera is in the way, I cannot quite see where this is, what I'm opening. Still some bubbles coming out, hasn't yet been bled, but I'll close it for the moment to turn to the second bleeding valve. Unfortunately, I don't really have much light inside, but what you need to do as well is put the heating on the hottest possible setting. So this opens the heater matrix, so water can come in, air could kind of escape through the matrix. So you can do this several times, first from that one, then close it, then the second one, then that one, until you kind of see no air escaping. So for example, I'll open this, have a suitable container underneath, I'll have a bit of tissue. Have a bit of a tissue underneath because it generally just drips everywhere. Have a little bit of a tissue and then open it up. Only slightly, there was a bit of air there, and close it up. That's it. Mop up any coolant and so on. And I can do the other one. I'll do it only slightly the other one, but a couple of times it's kind of alright. So I've closed both bleeding valves. Next thing is to put this vacuum pipe back in. It's just a simple push. That's closed there, both are closed. So next thing is to fill up the reservoir, and I'll fill it, the maximum line is it's about here. Max about here, but I'll fill it up a bit more up to here because I know it will drop once it goes around the system, so I know I'll fill it up a bit more, but you can have it on the max. There we go, I filled it up to about there. Of course, don't forget to close up the coolant reservoir, and you have to be careful not to strip the threads there. It should be fairly easy, and then I'll close it up. Next thing is to put everything back together and take the car for a spin. First is to put back the airbox. So on the airbox, this is the side that goes in there. So on the airbox there is a cut here that goes underneath there. So you have to make sure that that fits there. But it's fairly the same, the reversal procedure. Basically slot it in. So I'll remove slightly the brake fluid reservoir, push this pipe aside. It's a bit fiddly in there, and then I'll have to push it that side so I can put back the reservoir in its place. So you have to kind of fit it in place. I'm holding this pipe with one finger just not to be in the place. So I'll put it in and then I'll lift it that side, just to see that the bottom pin has this that I showed has slotted in, and then you have to basically push it until that thing it's inside the pipe there. There we go. So I'll push it from that side just so this goes inside. Hold this pipe from one finger and then kind of pushing it until it slots into place, and this slotted into place. I can then push that pipe in, basically hold it backwards and put it over. It has to click, and make sure that it has click in there and doesn't do anything. So next thing, you have to tie up this it's with a screwdriver. You have to make sure it's nice and tight. Next is the bolt for the air filter. Next is to put the resonator box, and I'm showing this pipe because it's a little bit tricky because you have to rotate it. So if you rotate it clockwise to the max possible, it doesn't really rotate anymore and you can't pull it. Next thing is to fit the resonator box, and I'm not filming it from the top, I'm filming from that pipe that's from the air filter. Because that's the tricky bit. So this has to be kind of rotated to the right side at clockwise to the maximum possible, and just push it there, fit in the resonator box on top. And while we're holding it like that, so you can put it inside. Of course you have to, because it will unscrew from the other side, you have to kind of stop it with a finger. I'm not quite showing, but kind of stop it, then you can slip it in here. It's a bit difficult to show it on camera. there is a kind of a slot. This goes inside, and then you kind of rotate it counterclockwise, and this goes inside, and that's nice and secure. Don't forget to screw the two bolts for a brake fluid reservoir, and these are plastic connections, so make sure that I do it by hand first, just to make sure that this goes kind of alright and I'm not forcing the threads or anything, otherwise they might kind of strip it. Now, before you start the car, make sure that everything's connected. Two bolts on the brake fluid, the crankcase, well, it's not a crankcase breather, the clamp there, the bolt there. You've secured the coolant reservoir cap, the resonator. This pipe is nice and secure, and it's both connected. And then next thing is to start it up. So I got the engine nice and hot, at least for half hour. Make sure that the heating inside of the car blows hot air. Also, you have to then look at the level of the coolant, and mine has dropped only slightly. So originally it was up to here, it has dropped up to there, but it's nice and bright red color. So what I'll do, I'll remove everything again, the filter, the resonator, and then I'll bleed the 2 points again, one after another, just a little bit. If there is any air, small air bubbles, I'll remove them. So it's second time doing that. Then I'll close everything, and that's it. That's how you replace coolant in Peugeot 307 1.6 petrol. It will work for other Peugeots, and that's how you bleed it. But that's it. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Hopefully that's useful to someone. Subscribe, let me know for any comments in the comment section. Thank you.